talking about the same issue of education. So the PS was telling us that the stakeholders were engaged. Head teachers, this is the primary head teachers head boss and the secondary head teachers boss. The two unions, the Kenya National Union of Teachers, the KUPPET, have also been engaged. The Kenya Parents Association have been engaged. So all stakeholders.
Everybody's ready to go.
No, what I wonder is what is the level of engagement really? I mean, they've
Meetings.
been engaged. Yes, meetings. And all the interests of this diversity was taken care of with this
And
meeting.
met.
Okay.
And when did this occur?
No, he gave us an indication
sure.
that we actually did meet.
Yeah,
Yep.
they did meet.
And
No,
I don't think it was one meeting.
It
I would
can't
hope
have been one meeting.
I hope it was not.
No, I don't think it was. But again, there's a question of perspective. From a ministry's perspective, they met the threshold that was required for them to be able to move forward.
Yep.
But is that view shared by other stakeholders?
And it would be important then to know whether this has also been shared. You as parents and as students as well, we know that there are students who are listening to us. You can call us in at some point and let us know whether you understand what's going to happen in a couple of days' time. Already it's starting in some parts of the country. It's a very good program, if you ask me, because you're ensuring that children are now actually engaged.
The details that have emerged so far regarding the content of the curriculum actually fall in the category of what I would call exciting. Things that are actually important, but are not in the learning curriculum that our day-to-day learning has had.
Yeah.
But one would argue not just of equal importance, but of significant importance. Things that people ought to understand, young people ought to understand and know. Yes. And for that, we must say it's commendable.
It is.
It is commendable.
It is. Well, like Dr. Kipsang was saying, COVID caught everybody unawares.
It did.
It forced people to look back and see what can we do. It's we have participated in that issue of raising the concern about what is it exactly that the Ministry of Education is doing. It's unacceptable that children can lose an entire year without any learning taking place. Dr. Kipsan has come and told us, well, we're now going to have that learning. So we rolled out, of course, the e-learning and the remote learning. This is using KICD curriculum on online and radio and mobile phones. But with the realization that not everybody has access to this, we have to do something else.
I want to be encouraged and excited that even beyond coming up with a strategy in the now for what would happen over the next 3 or 4 months for learners at home or in their communities, I want to be encouraged that this is not just to fill a gap only, but that, it would look forward to times when something like this would happen again and the country would be prepared, because that has been the hue and cry of quite a number of parents, that the response or the answer or the solution that was given then they're not really happy with, because couldn't there have been something else that would have made sure that children would have been adequately engaged when it came to matters education, whatever it was. We understand that you can't physically be in a class, but then is there something else that could have been done? And that's the question, as opposed to shutting down schools and saying, okay, well, until we hear from the Ministry of Health, we're going to shut down.
Yeah.
We've seen innovative creations around the world of what people have been able to do, of what ministries, governments have been able to do to keep children engaged. We should be at that place, COVID or not, whereby introduction of new strategies should be in place to make sure that education continues regardless.
The thing is, when one says we were caught off guard, I think the extent to which we were caught off guard, I'm not referring to anybody, it's just us, can only manifest itself in the efforts that are being made to now try and see how best we can make of this clearly terrible situation. And Mother Nature hasn't been very, very useful in this regard. Mother Nature has tended to thwart some of the efforts that one may make, or has made them a little more difficult. But then again, there's something that the Principal Secretary said, which I liked. Said they are working to ensure that some of these alternative ways of learning are in place irrespective of COVID.
Yep.
So whether it's COVID or not, they are working with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development to ensure whether it's online learning, whether it's learning through radio, all these things. The radio bit I've added. He didn't say radio. I'm that who's saying radio. But when he said all alternative, I assume
that's
radio.
an alternative.
Yes, it is. That these things are in place so that we are never caught in this situation where we are figuring out what to do again. That the plan B is in place and we're able to actually implement plan B should the need arise. And the need will arise because floods are not going to come to
Oh,
an end.
yes. There will be floods. There will be. Now, you hear schools in Baringo have been submerged.
Some swept away.
Some swept away
Yes.
in West Pokot. And this will happen over and over and over again. Let's bring in our guest now in the show. This is Akello Misori. He is the Secretary General of the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers. Akello, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us once again, and karibu to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
So we were speaking with the Principal Secretary for Basic Education, Dr. Belio Kipsang, and we know that the government is already rolling out this community-based learning from the very onset. What are your views on this program?
Thank you so much for having me on this program. Let me say that the program was well thought of, and it is what would salvage a very dire situation, as it were, in Kenya today, because as the Cabinet Secretary could have said, the Principal Secretary could have said, the issues which are here are things which we did not anticipate, and therefore, going forward, nobody had anticipated that schools would be closed for our own academic year. This one is unprecedented, and therefore, engaging the youth in readiness and to allay the fears and anxiety which come with all this would be the most appropriate. So, in our view, we supported this move, and we have always called and already asked our teachers to cooperate so that they engage the learners in preparedness to have life skills, understand the values, understand the community, and also understand that this is a state which is similar to a state of war. Therefore, nobody should take it as something which is a punishment.
Mr. Misori, we are informed that there is some curriculum that is actually going to be used in the engagement of our pupils. I believe you've had a look at this curriculum, or your team has looked at this curriculum. Do you think it's comprehensive, or is it something that probably will need a little tweaking as time goes on?
Let me just dispel the rumors that there is no curriculum yet which has been approved to undertake this program. It was basically to be an ad hoc arrangement to have learners engage on issues of values and so on. But if the cabinet, the ministry and the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development is already developing one, then we are yet to be exposed to it. But I think for it to be uniform all over, I think it was appropriate. But we have not been exposed to that kind of curriculum.
So in your understanding then, how is this going to be rolled out? How are your teachers going to engage with the pupils? You as a post-primary, so we're talking about Form 1, Form 2, 3s and 4s. From where you understand it, how are they going to engage the students?
You know, one aspect which must be understood is that this kind of arrangement is very informal. It does not take place in a setting like a classroom situation or in a school situation. In the neighborhood where children live or where the youth live are also parents, and these parents include among others the teachers who are also in those neighborhoods. Remember, maybe the principal secretary did not indicate accurately what's happening. The teachers who are supposed to engage these youth wherever they are not basically the teachers who teach them in their schools, but they are teachers who stay with them in that neighborhood. So what this one calls for is basically a serious commitment and creativity among the teachers to collect and maybe assure the learners. And that is why the multi-agency is involved, so that the Nyumba Kumi, the provincial administration, as it were, and the Ministry of Education are working in line with the teachers to just first to identify the learners, to assure the parents that the person who is engaging the children is actually somebody who is having the competency and the capacity to deliver any information that is useful and in readiness for the purposes and in preparation for the opening up of schools in January.
It sounds like that in itself is going to be something that will take a lot of time, Akello. It sounds like what you've just said in terms of making sure that the teachers who are available at the community level presently are able to pass on this information to learners, those who would have the skills to pass on life skills. It sounds like something that would take a very long time to be able to do. Do you think that can be covered now? Because from what you're saying, it doesn't sound to me like that exercise has been carried out.
Maybe just to dispel any fears is that teachers are the only persons who have the capacity and the competency to and strategy to deliver any form of information to learners. Remember, the children have been home, and there is already the outcry that there is increase in crime, increase in substance and drug abuse, and also the teenage pregnancies. Children are only safe in the hands of teachers, those who are still within the age of school going. And the idea of this will take time is a perfect fear. What is there is that teachers know what is useful to the category of learners.
I understand that, Akello, but if I may interject just at that moment, you've said that what is being taught here are life skills, for example. Add,
Yes.
Different subject matter from what they would necessarily study according to the syllabus. So we're looking at almost extracurricular, right? Almost
Yes.
to that level. And you've said,
It is extra. It is
right?
extra,
And
not
you've
almost,
said
it's
just now there would be a need to identify teachers who are in those particular communities who can pass on this knowledge because their regular teachers are not in that place right now. That's what I'm actually asking.
That is the reason for which the Teacher Service Commission has been asked to map out that where are your teachers. If once that exercise has been going on, and as we stand currently, the teachers are already identified in the communities where they are. What now remains is now the startup that can start. In fact, in some areas, some teachers have already engaged the learners, but the one which is formal, which is closer to being formal, is the one which I think the principal secretary was talking about, that the rollout will definitely be in September.
So registered so far 300,000 plus teachers. Are there some teachers that you know of who are not willing to participate in this program?
The teachers who are likely not to be engaged in the short run are basically those teachers who are involved in official programs like those attending the workshops on what we call science and mathematics training organized by SMART. So those are the only teachers who are likely not to be found.
Okay.
But the rest of the teachers are ready and they are available for this purpose. In fact, my own chairman, who is not currently practicing teacher and is a member of parliament, in the estate where he is, I visited him last week. He already organized a group of youths, and that was a hybrid of primary and secondary school goers, and there are a lot of nice time. Because he himself is a footballer, he was playing with them football and advising them that let us continue. Life will continue after this. This is something which is there because it found us in this circumstance, but it will go. Once it goes, we shall resume learning.
From your understanding of this community education or community learning, the resource person that will probably be at the helm of ensuring that the students actually learn is a teacher. But will they be using resource personnel like, say, community leaders and people within the community who have some knowledge and could impart life skills to these students as well?
That is not within our purview, but the reason for which multi-agency approach was adopted was basically to make the whole exercise have confidence from the parents and the community that the people who are engaging the learners are those who have the capacity and who are genuine and who can do the exercise. But I don't think in the absence of teachers, there are also church leaders or religious leaders who can also advise and counsel the youth. So I don't think they are excluded in this. This is an approach which we must look at from the perspective that in the institution of war, what would each one of us give? What would each one of us give? The teachers are only critical here because these are learners who are undergoing a program which has been disrupted. Now, if they are in the same community, can they be of use of sorts? And that is the reason for which they are not going to teach mathematics, science, or physics, or history or geography, but basically things which are definitely can make people survive in the circumstances like this.
Just paint for us a picture. How would a typical session go like? Assume it's a teacher who's dealing with the age group of Form 1s and Form 2s.
That one is, it is not perfect. The session would start by maybe the children or the youth expressing their fears. And the teacher would definitely facilitate that discussion. They will be discussing their fears, how they would do, how they even see the environment. And then secondly, they will even start by cleaning their own environment. After that, they can be involved in some games.
So this is basically just keeping the children from home and engaging them in some way and using the teacher as the person who's engaging them. I can see this working maybe for the younger children, the ages, the grades 1 to grade 4, for instance, or maybe up to grade 8. The teenagers from Form 1 to Form 4, do you see them actually attending this on a regular basis?
I think that is the reason for which now the teacher should work with them. It is not something supposed to be compulsory, not something very rigid based on how the school timetable is supposed to look like. By the way, even where I stay currently, whenever I walk out, I see a big number of youth, some of them playing basketball, some of them jogging around. They lack something to do. And, at this particular time, the parents have also gone to look for what can sustain the family. It is something which, for the older ones, it would even be perfect. They will be involved in debates. They will be discussing many things. They will be sharing. And besides sharing, they can now be, the teachers should be able to identify with them the kind of activities which are useful.
We want to open up this conversation as well to the audience on 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600, because we'd like for you to engage us and tell us, what do you think about this community-based learning that is being rolled out by the government? What fears do you have? What wins do you see it bringing to the education sector, and also to just the lives of these young ones who are at home and who've been at home since March? So we'll open up the phone lines for that, and as well as our social media handles, Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. It broadcasts every morning, every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Spice FM. 94.4 in Nairobi and 7.9 in Mombasa. We are also in Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, and Malindi. And also this morning, we are live on KTN Home. We're having an education conversation this morning, and on the line with us is Akello Misori. He's the Secretary General of KUPPET. KUPPET is the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers. And just before we went to the break, we were having a conversation with Akello. You want to ask him a question?
I do. Mr. Akello, you mentioned that this teaching experience will have a certain informality to it. So if there's informality, what structures will guide this informality? Because for any learning to take place, some form of structure must be there.
I think this is where we have been caught up in a lot of anxiety, because the cabinet secretary announced, and then it has been followed by a circular by Teacher Service Commission. What is there is that the assumption is that in every village where the learners are, already they are in that village. They know each other.
Yep.
What was lacking in this arrangement is that there was this element of authority. That why are you collecting and organizing a lesson when the government has declared a protocol of meetings are not supposed to be there. And that is the reason for which we are having what we call multi-agency. The Nyumba Kumi is supposed to give that assurance. The provincial administration is supposed to give that assurance. It is not supposed to have a very strict adherence to the school structures where after their lesson somebody is coming to supervise. It is something which is supposed to operate as activity in an emergency to manage transition from this COVID-19 situation to the anticipated normal period, which is coming in 2021, and basically to address the salient issues which are there, because we have to rescue the youth who are being lost to crime, as I said earlier, drugs and substance abuse. And more importantly and most strange is that we have had registered quite a number of teenage pregnancies. This is going to make us lose the youth.
Yeah.
So the element of informality is that it is not supposed to have where people have pens, books, and so on, and they write. It is supposed to be an informal session. For example, a small gathering, just like a chief's barasa. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to the phone lines. Solomon is calling in from Mombasa. Solomon, good morning.
Good morning.
You have a question for Akello Misori.
I have a question or an opinion.
Right.
There is something you said about those extra curriculum that they are not that fundamental. That fundamental as opposed to formal education. I want to tell you, Mr. Akello, these extra curricular activities, or what you call life skills, are the most important than having that degree level of education. That's why you find most people who are graduates.
But Solomon, did he really say that?
No, I'm saying there was a question that you have asked,
Yes.
CT, about the extra.
Yes.
The extra things based that
Yes.
they are not that really important, isn't
Yeah.
it?
No.
No?
Let me tell. You can correct me.
Actually, the conversation is that they are being implemented now because they are considered important.
Yeah. Now you see, for example, these life skills are most important than basic education. I can have my degree, I don't get a job. But if there's a skill I learned, maybe in carpentry, in rearing of cows, chicken, those things can make me have a livelihood,
Yeah.
as opposed to having my degree, which is just a piece of paper.
Point
Because when it
taken.
comes to life, in life, what is most important is how much value am I giving to my society.
All
I
right.
can't be an accountant.
All right.
But-
Point made, Solomon. Thank you very much. Let's hear from Eric in Suba. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
morning.
You have a question for Akello Misori.
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
My question is,
Yes.
good morning, that is.
Eric, go ahead. We can all hear you.
Yes,
Okay, I think Eric has his radio is still on, so it's confusing you. Erica, if you can just switch off your radio and then we'll have the conversation with you. And you'll ask your question to Akello Misori. Akello Misori is on the line. He is a Secretary General of the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers. We are talking about the rollout of the community-based learning that's about to roll out in some areas. It has already started, and this is what the PS for Basic Education, Dr. Belio Kipsang, told us earlier. Akello Misori is here saying, yes, indeed, the members of KUPPET are already participating in this. They've registered themselves for this, and their union is endorsing this particular program and saying the importance of it in terms of engaging, keeping the youth engaged, especially during this time. The vices that we've seen in the community since schools were closed on March 15th, substance and drug abuse and the rest, are things that we need to address as a community, and therefore rolling out this program is very, very important. Let's go to Kisumu now, where Abubakar is on the line. Good morning, Abubakar.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine.
All right, ask your question to Akello Misori.
Now, my question is,
Yes.
in case maybe the students fail to attend the sessions, say for a week, what should the teacher do?
So how should teachers deal with absenteeism, Akello?
I think we have been reading a lot in this exercise, which I don't think should worry everyone. From March to date, we have not had such a program, and therefore we seem to be so much anxious of what is going to happen when this thing happens. What should happen is that the children are already in the community. They are involved in so many activities. The ones who are mapped as living in a neighborhood can have access to a teacher who is also mapped to be in that neighborhood. And therefore, the security of the children is known. That, for example, if a student leaves or a child leaves a house to go somewhere else, then there will be no question where this person went, because the teacher is there. The number kumi person is already aware that the person who is engaging this person is Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so. So that is the thing. It is not supposed to be having the rigid terms of reference like we have timetables in schools where we have got strict rules that you must do this and so on. But of course, it is a program. By the way, what we are trying to bring on board, or what is going to be introduced here, is what other countries are doing, especially even in normal circumstances, that when students are away from school, they are at home, there is a social support program which is there. This is basically a social support program where they will develop their own rules, they will develop their own programs, they will regulate their own activities, and things will go on.
I guess
so
where this is coming from, sorry to interject here, Akello, I think where the Abubakar's question is coming from is from a parent's perspective. Your child has left home and you expect that they have gone to engage with a teacher. And yet the teacher has not engaged with the student. So who answers the question? Is it possible are the teachers going to be doing a register and ticking a register to know that this particular student, I'm expecting these students to come today, and so such a student did not come, therefore they can give feedback to the parent and find out why has so-and-so not appeared in my sessions for the last 1 week?
Eric, in fact, if I may add to yours, what if, as you say, there isn't a rigid or a regulated format for ensuring that learning takes place, the timetable? How then will a parent be confident enough to let the children leave because you are not certain?
Yep.
I think, let me repeat it for the second time, that the envisaged program is not supposed to have the rigidity which school has. I have also said that the teacher in question may not necessarily be the teacher who is teaching this youth when they are in their normal schools. This is a teacher in the neighborhood and who is also part of this society. How does a society punish its errant members? I have said they are supposed to have a generated understanding among them. For example, according to the envisaged program, the teachers should have between 15 to 20 at most. That is a very small number to know they can understand each other and so on. What is there is that we know that teachers are professionals. They are not supposed to use this opportunity, and they are not supposed to leave these children to do what they want. Let me put it very clear. Just like in the village where each one of us come from, when you meet any errant child or any errant youth, you can as well tell that child, you know, what you're doing is not correct. This is how we should do it. It is not a programmed thing, but that information will stick to the learner. Unless that learner that youth is not ready to accept you, how can you help it? That one is now the sharing which is in the community, that so and so children cannot participate in this program because they find it useless.
But if it isn't programmed, how will we be able to even understand the success or the lack of success thereof, or the outcomes of this particular program? I mean, there must be some benchmarks we hope to attain. And for this to happen, there must be some program. There must be some element of, if I may use your term, rigidity.
What is here is that we have the expectation that when we finish the year 2020, we shall be having all of our children in school in good shape. That is the benchmark which is supposed to be there. And from the word go, you realize that this was not anticipated. Kenya has no regulation about education in an emergency. And if there was an education in an emergency, then you would not resort to community teaching. But in the absence of this, do you think we can just watch things as they are, and then we have a whole generation lost, and we have a very high school dropout when 2021 comes? We don't have students in school or children.
But all those factors that you've just mentioned then are reasons for some elements of rigidity. Those things that you've just mentioned.
This is a containment policy, and it is informal. It requires understanding. It requires just volunteers to come out to assist in both ideas, and also in asking to making the whole process to succeed.
If we talk about things like, trying to get rid of these vices, because the reason why this was put in place was because there's so many things that were going wrong when children were not in school, right? And the people have now, been gone to their own vices, done their own things. And then we're saying this is being introduced to make sure that there's something being put in place to curb a lot of this. Now, if everybody's left to their own wills, to their own whims, to basically do whatever, it's not compulsory, and then we're not going to force anybody to do anything, then it seems like it really is neither here nor there. It really doesn't matter. How will learning take place? How will you be able to judge the successes of this? Or because some people would say then there's no point. You would rather then just wait until January when schools open.
I think I've been very clear, and I said that the group, once identified, especially once the teachers are identified the way they have done, then the learners have been identified. The entire cohort of a group, or in that matter, for the sake of the success of the program, are basically to develop their own regulation. This one may not strictly have where a situation whereby you have to expel people who do not want to attend classes, or you have to reprimand. There could be certain regulations, just like when you attend a workshop, you have to develop certain rules, rules which may not necessarily be adopted by another group in another hall, but these ones are basically to help you within the same group. Yeah.
Mr. Akello, are you satisfied that your teachers, because you do represent these teachers, have been adequately trained to meet this challenge?
Teachers are professionals, and they are the ones who have the capacity and the energy and the strategy to disseminate information to the learners. So therefore, I don't think what they are being asked to do is too much. In school where we teach, we are judges, we are policemen, we are doctors, and so on. We guide and counsel the youth. So what is there now is even easier. The only difficulty which is there is that you are living in a neighborhood. These children are not necessarily you are the ones you teach, and you'll be given to teach in school. These ones are informally assembled. But once they identify that you are a teacher, they will have to listen. I think I'm satisfied that teachers are adequately prepared at any time to handle any situation with the youth.
Akello, what would teachers like to see in place for the future? Because like you said, unprecedented, caught everybody unawares. Nobody was ready for this. But I think it's also, again, pose the same question to the PS, that it is clear that something needs to be put in place so that whatever happens, there is always a fallback for how learning and education can continue. From a teacher's point of view, what would you like to see? And how would you then contribute towards that?
This is a very, very important question for me this morning, that in going forward, this COVID-19 has really caught us unawares and has really opened a horizon for us to think and to start navigating on how we will go forward. Once there should be a legislation in terms of education and developed policy in terms of education in emergency. But another thing is the level of preparedness of our teachers in their training colleges or universities, that the curriculum must be readjusted to incorporate things which we have always ignored. For example, you remember in this nation, the Jubilee administration, when it came on board, it came on the principle that they were going to give even the learners the laptops or tablets or whichever. And this one now have become very handy. But you remember during the same period, students were banned from using phones in schools because of certain things which were there. So we need an investment in this area of internet connectivity, electricity, and also to broaden the scope of the teachers' understanding of the environment more than what we have now. They prepare the teacher that every teacher coming from teachers training colleges, from the university, must be competent in IT, so that relaying lessons online will not be a challenge like what we now see. Remember now, even schools which could be in a position to provide lessons online could not do so, because how many teachers in those institutions have the IT component as part of their training and competency to organize lessons and present in an online format. So these are things which are there. We need now to think not just out of the box, but even without the box itself. We must be ready to chew the bullet that this thing has really opened horizons for us to have a conversation on education in an emergency.
Do you have any plans or any proposals that as a union you've come up with on how to, first of all, bridge the gap with the existing teachers, and then going forward on how to ensure that teachers who come out of teacher training colleges are IT competent?
Besides talking about matters of security, we have already proposed to the Cabinet Secretary Education and the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development on what we expect to be included in terms of the curriculum content for going forward after this COVID, because this thing has really opened our underbelly very badly.
There are those who have raised concerns about the teachers who are employed not by the Teacher Service Commission but by the various boards of management. The relationship between the TSC teachers, the BOM teachers, and especially now when you're rolling out community-based learning, how the two are going to work. What are your views on that?
Excellent. And it is important also to note that one of the issues which have been a real problem is the teacher numbers in schools, and the teacher pupil ratio has been a real challenge. And we have education, and education which is a right to every child, and very significant for this economy. But the government has not prioritized that we need to have sufficient numbers of teachers to handle the children in our public schools. So our public schools have become even the largest number of. Our public schools are a semblance of big private enterprises, because majority of those who transact the business of teaching in these schools are those who are called BOM teachers. The relationship cannot be smooth, because here you have staff who are doing the same duty with the others, yet they are inadequately paid. Like in this circumstance, it is good the government already saw it wise to also give stimulus to schools to pay the BOM teachers. You remember you are paying one teacher 60,000, but the other one you are paying 15,000 shillings. Yeah. They are living in the same neighborhood, they are teaching the same number of lessons, but one is underpaid simply because this person does not belong to Teacher Service Commission. And because the Teacher Service Commission is also given a restricted number because of underfunding. They are underfunded to employ. They are only regulating the numbers, they are paying the numbers that they have been given to have. So going forward, as part of the reform program in this post-COVID, because I am seeing a situation where private enterprises like schools, which also form the bulk of those who have given the government the ease in terms of congestion in schools, are likely to close down, because if they do not operate for a whole year, they may not come up in January. So it means that the government must come up with a program to incorporate in their mind that we must employ almost a similar number that we now have. The economy must be able to contain that. These are difficult decisions to make and will have to be made because the new circumstance when we open will not be the same. We must ensure that the teacher numbers are improved significantly and you have to contain them with better pay. So those are issues which must be addressed.
But these are matters that I'm sure your union has been talking about for quite a while, and yet the number of trained teachers who are unemployed is probably even more than those who are actually employed. Do you actually see this situation ever being rectified to the point where we have the adequate student-teacher ratio that we know we must have, and that people who actually are trained and can be employed are employed?
It is our choice as a nation. It is going to be a choice as a nation. Because why do you have to spend a lot of money training a personnel? You know, training a teacher is not a walk in the park. It is very expensive. Now, when they are out of college, you make them border riders. This is going to be a choice for Kenya to make. That what priorities do we have? We must, if we want competent teachers, if we want more motivated teachers, if we want to have a generation which is focused to develop prosperous growth, then we must engage those people whom we have trained. It is a challenge, yes, but our focus, we have to do with what we have. That is why sometimes you see us dancing on the streets that we have got a lot of work and therefore you must pay as well. But now, it is not just going to be an issue of pay. We will have to insist that you must improve the teacher numbers.
Let's talk about the relationship between your union and the Kenya National Union of Teachers. For some time now, we have seen some sort of acrimonious relationship between these two complementary unions. Why is that?
I don't think it must be an understatement to say that there's an acrimony. The relations between KUPPET and the KNUT is not that bad. Whatever could be there is just sibling rivalry because one person want to sit on my chair, the other one also complain about that. But that one does not affect the profession per se. Well, I know the KNUT has had leadership issues, and that one does not touch KUPPET in any way.
Mr. Akello, the question that Eric is asking, I think, hinges on one simple thing. If the voices of NAT and KUPPET were one, don't you think you'd have a stronger and a more powerful bargaining position as teachers?
It has always been one. For example, remember...
but Mr. Akello, there are two unions. That already tells you that they are not one.
No. Our thought processes are one in terms of how to navigate the challenges we have in the profession and how we want to improve the terms and conditions of service of the employees. That's one. But now, when it comes to other things which I've already mentioned, like this person is taking my chair, that one can bring issues.
But Mr. Akello, KUPPET would never have actually existed if there wasn't this feeling for the longest time that not only took care of the interests of primary school teachers. Was this not something that was always being brought up in discussions?
I hope maybe you will have opportunity to read my book, Teachers Unions and Labor Relations in Kenya. I will bring it one of these days to your desk. Maybe it will answer most of the questions you ask. But one thing which is there, it is true, at some stage there was laxity. And the coming up of KUPPET even made KNUT a more vibrant union than before, because this one was just a giant which was sleepy. But now when we came and we were little dogs and we were barking, they realized that there was work for them to do. And for between 2001 to where we are now, when KUPPET has existed, you can realize that that is the period that KNUT has reached as the most important contribution in this nation, either in policy making and so on. You remember when we were discussing the National Constitution in 2010, it was the voice of the teachers which made the Teacher Service Commission to be created as an independent commission. Remember, we had shot the previous constitution because it did not give us the TSC as an independent commission. So you can see how a unified voice has worked before, and I don't think we have left that bit.
Akello, Misori, we want to thank you very much for speaking to us today. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that we'll be able to beat COVID so that you can come and join us in the studio once again soon. Any final message to your member teachers and especially to parents and students?
Thank you so much for having me around. But what I would wish to tell the teachers is that let us give back to the society, because let us sacrifice, because this is a state of war. In a state of war, each one of us is called to come out and join the forces so that we beat the enemy. This is an invisible enemy, and therefore we have to fight it with all the tools that we have. For now, let us keep safe. Let us keep safe. Let us wear masks when we are in public, and also keep distance, but wash our hands thoroughly. Thank you so much.
Asante sana.
Thank you,
Akello
sir.
Misori, Secretary General of the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, KUPPET. Thank you very much for joining us.